You know that feeling in the back of your mind, that sense that things are just harder now, that the roadmap our parents followed just doesn't seem to exist for us anymore? Well, you're not imagining it. A lot of us are feeling that way. And today, we're going to get into exactly why. I mean, this is the big, scary question that's hanging in the air, right? Especially here in Korea. It feels like for the very first time, that basic promise that each generation will do better than the last is kind of broken. But is this just our problem? Not at all, actually. What we're experiencing is part of a huge, fundamental shift that's happening in pretty much every developed country. And to really get a handle on what's affecting us personally, you have to zoom out and look at the massive global forces at work. So let's start there with the two biggest reasons for this change. Okay, so think of it like this. There are two enormous, unstoppable waves that are basically reshaping the entire economic world we thought we knew. And these waves touch everything from what kind of job you can get to how much you pay for lunch. So what are these two waves?
Right here, the first is what we call the demographic cliff, and the second is the end of globalization. Let's really dig into what these mean for us one by one, starting with that demographic cliff.
So the one number you have to watch is the working age population. We're talking about everyone between 15 and 64 years old. These are the people who make stuff, who buy stuff, who innovate. They're literally the engine of the economy. And what history shows us, with scary consistency, is that when this group starts to shrink, economic growth just stalls. It's an incredibly predictable pattern. And you don't have to take my word for it. Just look at the timeline. Japan's working age population peaked back in 1995. And what happened? The lost decade. Europe's peaked in 2010, right after the big financial crisis, and their economy has been sluggish ever since. And now, it's our turn. This year, 2025, is the year that demographic bomb really starts to go off for us.
Exactly. Then you have the second wave hitting us at the same time. Globalization is reversing. You see, for the last 40 years, we lived in this amazing economic sweet spot. We had cheap labor from places like China and cheap resources from everywhere else. That's what kept the price of everything from your phone to your clothes so low. Well, that party is over. With all the trade wars and geopolitical messes, high inflation is just the new normal.
Okay, so these are huge, kind of abstract forces. A shrinking population, the end of globalization. How do those big ideas actually connect to our real lives? To our job hunt, to our bank accounts?
Yeah, this is the one that drives me crazy. And I know it confuses a lot of people. I mean, simple logic would say, fewer young people, less competition, more jobs for everyone, right? But that is not what it feels like out there. So what gives?
It's a paradox because two different things are happening. First, a lot of the best, most desirable jobs, think semiconductors, EV batteries, are now being created overseas, in the US and other places, not here at home. Second, and this is crucial, when you have fewer young people, you have a smaller domestic market. Young people buy things, they drive consumption. So when that group shrinks, the whole local market shrinks, and all the jobs that serve that market start to disappear too. And there's another really painful effect. Just look at this number. 1%. In the United States, the richest 1% now control more wealth than the entire bottom 90% of the population. And believe me, this isn't just an American thing. It's a pattern we're seeing everywhere, and it gets worse with every single economic crisis.
That is just a staggering number. How does that even happen? How does the gap get that wide?
It's actually a predictable cycle. A crisis hits, the central bank panics, and prints trillions of dollars. But where does that money go? Not to us. It goes to big banks. They then lend it out at super low interest rates. And who can borrow that cheap money? Only people who already have assets in perfect credit. So they borrow for next to nothing, scoop up cheap stocks and real estate, and get even richer. Meanwhile, everyone else is just trying not to lose their job. It happens every single time.
You know, a lot of people think, oh, inflation is good for my apartment's value. But it's not that simple. A little bit of inflation, say around 2%, that's the sweet spot. It helps asset prices grow. But strong inflation, anything over 3%, that's a different beast. It scares central banks, so they jack up interest rates. And high interest rates are pure poison for the housing market.
Okay, wow, that is a pretty bleak picture. It's easy to hear all that and just feel completely overwhelmed.
For sure. But look, understanding the game is the first step to figuring out how to play it. So now, let's pivot. Let's talk about what we can actually do. A practical guide for how to navigate this new reality.
So in this kind of environment where our own currency, the won, is under pressure, going all in on it is just too risky. So a more defensive, resilient portfolio for these times might look something like this. A really solid chunk in US dollar assets, a bit of gold as a classic hedge, and then the rest in things like stocks for that long-term growth.
Okay, let's break that down. 50% in dollars feels like a lot. What's the logic there?
It is a lot, but here's the thinking. Korea is creating new money much faster than the US is, which naturally pushes down the value of the won over time. Gold is your classic insurance policy against inflation, and its supply isn't really growing anymore, which helps its value. And of course, you still need stocks for growth. It's all about not having all your eggs in one currency basket.
And look, especially when you're young, your most valuable asset isn't your money, it's your time and your skills. So this strategy, which I call time tech, is all about protecting that asset. You decide on your plan once, set up automatic transfers, and then, this is the most important part, you stop looking at it every day. You take all that time and mental energy you save, and you pour it into the investment with the absolute highest return. Yourself, your career, your skills.
So, we've covered the personal strategy. But what about the country? I mean, is there any hope on a bigger scale, or are we just stuck?
It's funny you ask, because believe it or not, there is. Korea actually has this very unique and very, very temporary window of opportunity. It's something that Japan and Europe never had. It's a fleeting moment. We're talking maybe 3 to 7 years max. A golden opportunity? How? Everything we've said points in the other direction.
I know, it sounds crazy, but here's why. 2 big reasons. First, our baby boomers are still in their peak earning and saving years, unlike in the West where they're retired and selling assets. And second, we have the National Pension Fund. It's this gigantic whale of money in our small financial pond. For the next few years, those 2 things combine to create a huge temporary surplus of capital.
So this is the trillion-dollar question. What do we do with all this cash? We're at a crossroads. Do we pour that money into the future? Into new startups? Into risky technologies? Into building a whole new engine for our economy? Or do we do what we've always done and just funnel it all back into real estate and construction? The choice we make right now will literally define the next 50 years for Korea.
But honestly, it's not just about the money. The real hope lies in our culture. We need to build a system, a society, where it's okay to take a risk and fail, where you have a safety net that lets you get back up and try something new again. Because the biggest tragedy isn't failing, it's wasting the lessons that only failure can teach you. And that really brings it all home. This golden window isn't going to stay open for long, so it leaves us all with a question to ponder. On a national level and in our own lives, what are we going to do right now to get ready for whatever comes next?